Hello folks. Before we move into the next part of the lesson on inheritance, I figured we'd introduce this new assignment out. We just finished covering Introduction to Object-Oriented Programming, and a couple of days ago we also did some objects into an array list. So I figured we'd introduce an assignment that applies the intro to object-oriented programming. So there's a new project here called TicTacToe OOP. It's pretty much the same as the previous project, but in a different style. So the style here is we're pretty much going to be rearranging code from the previous one and kind of encapsulating the code into a object structure, a class structure, I mean. Encapsulate means to hide things away, kind of like hide code into a different place, just to be a little more organized, and maybe you want to hide details away from some people. All right, so I'd recommend first of all downloading these two files, but please don't copy and paste the code like this right here. If you were to copy and paste the code right here, Canvas is probably going to get rid of the formatting. It's probably going to get rid of the white spaces and the new lines. So I'd recommend downloading. There's like a download button on the top right, or you could press this button over here. So let me download this. And yeah, there's two files in here, by the way, contrasted to the previous one. Oops, let me delete these real quick. Okay, download. Okay, cool. So I just downloaded these two files. Let me go ahead and move them into the directory so VS Code can see it. Okay, so it's in my files over here. Downloads, and then let me grab these, cut, and then I'm gonna put them in a folder. I'll call it Project 8. Project 8, and there it is. Cool. So I just pasted two files into this directory, and now if I load up VS Code, I should be able to see it. Okay, here's the VS Code, and let me look at projects, Project 8, and there it is. There's the two files. We got the main menu.java, and then we got the TicTacToe.java, which is these two files over here. So let me go ahead and navigate into this directory real quick. CD into projects, and then CD into project 8, and I should see it right here. Cool. So for the first tip I recommend for folks is to recommend to run the program right away. This way you can see how the program is working and kind of trace through the code. So, but what I mean by tracing through the code is kind of like running the program here and seeing what's happening. Like the entry point is in this main menu, so you can go main menu.java, and then what I mean by tracing is by going through each line and kind of seeing what's happening. Because later on it's gonna look tangled, but it's if you study a bit longer, it's not gonna look too tangled. It's gonna look super organized. But check it out. So I'm gonna run this real quick, and let's trace this. So it says which game do you want to play? So it's giving us three choices. I do want to give a heads up that choices 2 and 3 are placeholders. There's no need to implement these games. All right, the whole point of this assignment is to implement just one TicTacToe class. All right, these choices 2 and 3 are just placeholders to let folks see the bigger picture. Like, why do we put things into classes? It's really to make things super modular. So if you were to scale this program, you could build more classes, right? Like currently we have a TicTacToe class right here. Here, let me collapse this. So we have a TicTacToe class right here. But if you wanted to design two other classes, like one for Blackjack and one for Connect 4, you could do that. You just create two other files and implement those. But yeah, just ignore choices 2 and 3. Currently we only have just one. All right, and you can tell by this if statement here. This if statement says this decision tree says we only have really one choice. So let's see. So let me press 1. I'll press 1 and then enter. Okay, cool. So I pressed enter on 1 and then looks like it did something. So we should probably trace this code and see what's happening. All right, so we typed in 1 and what happened here? So this is invoking the default constructor. This is, if you might remember, the point of a default constructor is to initialize an object with certain attributes. All right, so let's trace this. Where is the default constructor? It's probably over here in the class itself. So let me load up the class over here, and then here it is. So the default constructor is right over here. All right, this is a method. Right, it's a method that pretty much says spawn an object and initialize its member values. All right, in this case, there's really only one member value. It's a two-dimensional board array. All right, so in the very beginning, we're saying every TicTacToe has a board, and if we were to spawn a game, all right, this is spawning, then we're going to initialize that board to all zeros. All right, so that's what's happening in this line. And then let's trace through the code. So then we go to game.play. This is a member function, member method. All right, so this is invoking a member method. Where is this member method living? It's over here in the class. So we could go into the class here and then check it out. Let me collapse this constructor over here. Cool, and yeah, we see the play function here. It's actually already written for you. There's nothing really to edit here. It's just like the last project, right? In the last project, most of the logic was already written for you. All you really had to do was complete some methods. So it's the same here. Here, let me put these side by side here. Actually, I'm not going to put it side by side. So we call the play method, and let's see what happens. So we're tracing, and then it says draw board. Okay, so what is this? This is a local method. This is a local method. The reason why I say local is because it lives in the same class. All right, so technically you could do this to make it more readable. You could say like this.drawBoard. It's gonna give you the same exact behavior, but this, well, what is this referring to? It's referring to whatever game instance we're using. So here, if I said this.drawBoard, it's kind of referring to the actual game.drawBoard. All right, so you could do this. It's a little more readable, but I'm gonna leave it as this right here, just plain draw board. Okay, so this is a local method. Well, where does it live? Well, it lives in the same class, and you'll see this if you scroll down a bit. There's a method here called drawBoard. All right, so yeah, it calls this method, and it's private. All right, private means only the class can access it. All right, the reason why I made it private is really just because the caller doesn't need to use it. Right, there's no need for the main right here to use it. Like here, the main is a caller. All to give the user an easier job, right, they can just go .play and not expect to do any other methods. So everything is kind of encapsulated in here. And that's why I made it private. It actually works both ways. You can make it public and private, but in my opinion, it's better to be private because, yeah, there's no need for external people to use these. All right, it's only for the local class here. Really, only the play function needs to use it. So let's take a look at this. I put a to do in here because this is currently hard coded to always print an empty board. All right, let me comment it. This is currently hard coded to print an empty board. In practice, you'll want to use the member attributes, the member variables to print these out. So if you scroll up a bit here, let me collapse these so it's easier to read. If you scroll up a bit, we'll see that every class instance has access to a board, meaning that you can use this local variable inside of here. Right? The reason why is because this is part of the class. This is part of the TicTacToe class, and this method is also part of the TicTacToe class, meaning that you can insert board elements into here somehow. All right, so I'll let folks figure that out. But yeah, that's why it's printing an empty board here. And if I were to type in some stuff, here let's continue tracing. So we drew the board, and what happens next? Well, it's in the play function. That's where we're at. So let me look at the play method, and yeah, we drew the board, and then now we initialize a player to 1, and then we start a scanner so we can take user input. And let's see. So we do enter the while loop. We can tell we enter the while loop because there is a print statement that we see down here. Right, player something. What is your move? All right, and then this is another local method, by the way. Is game over? You'll have to complete this as well. It's a private method all the way down here. So private method. Yeah. Currently, it's saying that the game is never over. So it's so this is actually an infinite while loop. It's never going to stop. Okay, so yeah, we're tracing. We printed this, and then now the program is waiting for 2 inputs. You could do it by space separated, but it's looking for 2 numbers. Like if I did 0 space 2, these 2 lines are going to consume these 2 numbers. Row is 0 and column will be 2. So I'm attempting to put a move right here, this top right corner. That's a 0 2. But when I press enter, all right, let me press enter and trace. So I press enter and start tracing. Let's see what happened. Okay, so both of these finished, and then now we see an inner loop. Right? Does this inner loop happen? No, it doesn't happen. We can tell because this print statement didn't print. Right, so this didn't happen. So let me just collapse this real quick. I'm just gonna collapse this while loop. All right, this didn't happen. So something happened here. All right, what's this line doing? Do people remember? So this is saying put the number into the position on the board. That's what it's saying. So there is like an invisible 1 here, an invisible integer 1 here, but we don't see it. Right? The reason why we don't see it is because when we draw the board again, it's hard-coded for an empty board. All right, so once you fix this, if you actually insert the board elements into here, right, the board elements come from this local variable, local 2D array. If you were to use those, then we'll see the actual player there. All right, so yeah, we're just kind of tracing through here, and then so we drew an empty board, and then here, what's happening here? If you might remember from last project, this is switching players. All right, switching players, because 3 minus 1 gives you 2, and then on the next iteration, 3 minus 2 gives you 1. So this is just swapping back and forth. 1, 2, 1, 2. All right. So here, let me expand this again. And yeah, once again, we're tracing. All right. So this happens, and then we go to the top of the while loop, because this is a loop. All right, so we go to the top, and we check, hey, is the game still over? Well, once again, this method is hard-coded. You have to fix this. This method says that the game is never over. Right? See, it's always returning false, meaning that this condition is always true, because this not false. Remember what the exclamation mark does? It negates it. So this is always always going to happen. And now it's printing player 2. What is your move? Right, so we're here, and then now we can expect 2 more inputs. So I'm gonna type in some inputs here. Like, let's say I put 2 0. All right, by typing 2 0, what am I expecting to do? I'm expecting to put a circle right here, the row and column. But once again, if I press enter, let's trace again. So I'll press enter, boom. Okay, so these 2 lines finished, and let's see. Does the inner while loop happen? No, it doesn't happen. We can tell because this print statement didn't happen over here. All right, so yeah, this doesn't happen, but this does happen. This is saying put a number 2 into the board position. So there is an invisible 2 here, an invisible integer 2. All right, but once again, when we draw the board, it's hard-coded. All right, so hopefully people are seeing the pattern here. It's the same assignment as previously, just a tiny different style. All right, so yeah, there's really just like four methods to complete. Most of the work is kind of copying code from the previous assignment and changing things a tiny bit. All right, cool. The differences between this assignment and the previous one is really just the arguments. If you take a look at the previous assignment, you'll see over here. So here's the previous one. Right, the previous assignment, we saw that all of these methods, they didn't really belong in a class, meaning that they required a board argument in every single method. Right, so but in the new project, we see that the draw board method no longer requires the argument. Right? It no longer needs to pass the board around. The reason why we don't need that argument anymore is because we can already access the board locally over here. This is a local variable, local array. All right, so that's the differences. So let me just point that out again. All right, here's the old assignment. All right, old assignment. You see this is move legal. Right, this is the old one. We had to tell the method what the board looks like, right, because this doesn't live in a class. But in the new assignment, here's the new one. This is move legal no longer needs the board argument, right? Because you can already grab it from up here. All right. So yeah, those are pretty much the main differences in this assignment. Okay. So yeah, that was just a quick intro on this assignment. Let me load the main menu again. Yeah, so in summary, there's really not much to do in the main menu. If you wanted to speed up the testing a bit, like here, because you might end up rerunning the program over and over again, and you might get slowed down by this main menu. So like this, if I were to run the program again, right, you might get slowed down from testing because every time you run the program, you have to give a choice. Like you have to say 1 and then run it again. So if you ever feel like this is slowing down your process, you can feel free to modify the main, right? Like this main, these 2 lines are really just the most important parts here. So if you wanted to speed up your testing, you could comment out everything except those 2 lines. Right, you comment these out right here. So you see how I commented everything. So this is saying every time I run the main, force us to play TicTacToe, which means if I were to run it again, I won't have to tell which game to choose. All right, so yeah, this is just for a faster workflow if you really need. But let me bring it back over here. Okay, cool. So let me test it, and yeah, there it is. Now I can press 1, and then yeah, here's the incomplete game. Okay, let me Control C this so I can quit. Control C. Okay. Sweet. So that was just a quick intro on this project over here. All right, I'm gonna stop the recording here and continue with the rest of the lesson. The rest of the lesson is going to be talking about inheritance, which is object-oriented programming, but a little more advanced. It's not really part of the TicTacToe assignment, so I recommend finishing the assignment before seeing this next lecture. All right.